Have you been feeling like you want more clients and you want to attract the right clients? Then you're going to want to listen up to this episode where Yvonne McCoy and I speak about attracting your right clients with your unique power. And I have the pleasure of introducing you today to Yvonne McCoy. Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, everybody. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be good because we're talking about the topic of attract your right clients with your unique power. And I love that because it's not attract your right clients with these 50 million things you have to do and please change yourself. And so we're going to be able to go through all of that. But first, I would love for my people to be able to just learn more about who you are. Please share.
Oh, I'd love to. I have been an entrepreneur in one shape or form for over 30 years. And um, I've always been interested in a lot of things. And so I have a lot of very strange backgrounds, things that I've done. I did taxes for 15 years. But one of the things that until I got into my own business, it was kind of a through line, and I think it's true for a lot of women, is we do what's kind of expected. And that's not our fault. That's kind of from society. There was a role for us, and you were taught to be still and not heard, don't get a big head, don't toot your own horn, that kind of stuff. And so, I was like, I was good at math. And I think because of emotional things, math had a definite answer. 2 + 2 was 4. Other things you had to, like, feel your feelings and stuff. And because of the chaos in my own family, I didn't want to go there. So I originally went to college, majored in math 1 semester, then went into science, then went into I was going to write the great American novel, then went, so I didn't want to read and so finally said, oh my God, I'm not going to graduate on time, and ended up going into journalism,
Mm.
which I never worked in. And then, ended up, I was a hippie, ended up running a food co-op, and thought, I'm really good at this business stuff, which nobody had said you should go into business, right? And so I ended up going to Wharton. And again, it was an accident. It wasn't a purposeful thing. I got in a fight with my mom. She wouldn't lend me the tuition. And so I had to start shopping for scholarships. And my friend was like, you should go to Wharton. And I'm like, that's a really good school. And then she goes, you should go, you should apply, and got accepted, right?
Mm.
And of course I did what was expected. I'm good at math. So my major was finance and accounting, which I hated. I always wanted to do marketing, but I kept making these decisions.
Mm.
I'm good at math. Um, and so I worked at an insurance company doing private placement, which I hated. And then I got into taxes, which was a little bit better because I eventually became a director. I had 12 stores. It was very entrepreneurial in nature. And then left that and started doing what I always really wanted to do, which was I wanted to help adults learn how to read, because
Mm.
I couldn't read as a kid, and
Mm.
found out I was not good at that. Because part of it was an emotional thing. It was like it brought me back to when I couldn't read as a kid. And honestly, I could not slow my brain down enough. I mean, I have all the respect in the world, but I just could not sit there for the dog I was like, you know? And, but I came up with a good system, which is another kind of through line. I feel I've always been the kind of person that can find a way to get things done fast. So even when I was in high school, I went into a geometry class, and I never read the chapter unless I couldn't solve the problem. And in this particular one, the teacher said, the proof up on the board. And I had done it in 3 steps. Everybody else had taken 20 or 25 steps. And my teacher said, okay, this will work, but would you please do it the right way next time? Now, my question is, what makes it right if it takes 20 steps versus 3? And that's part of the way we were raised, which is what doesn't allow us to be ourselves. And
Mm.
that's what attracts clients to us. And so, I found that I was really good at workforce, and I, ended up because of the adult literacy stuff, and I was teaching classes, I got a book that said 22 strategies to make your life better. And I
Mm.
got it so I could teach it to my students. And as I went through it, it was like, oh my God, I need that. I need that. I need that. And at the very end, the book was written by Thomas Leonard, who is the father of coaching. it said, if you're interested, sign up for our course. And that's how I began.
That's how you got into coaching.
That's how I got into coaching. And of course, because I
Wow.
had this MBA, I went into business coaching,
Wow.
and I coached executive directors.
Wow.
Particularly what I ended up doing was doing women executive directors of nonprofits. And
Mm.
that's why when COVID came in 2020, I lost my business. Um, it was like watching the sinking of the Titanic. One day I had a business and then we were closed down. The next day I didn't. They
Well,
couldn't.
let's go into that a little bit more because I know in your bio, and that Yvonne's bio will be in the show notes, you do mention this as a pivotal moment. So other people might coin this as my lowest point or
Mm,
the tragic situation, but you can call it a pivotal moment. I know pivot was like at the end of COVID, the worst word ever for business owners because we kept hearing just pivot, pivot. But anyway, how is this a pivotal moment for you?
so going from a very nice income that I had kind of fallen into,
Hmm.
right? Because I would do one executive and in one organization, they would refer me to another. And I really wasn't working very hard to get the business that I was getting. And suddenly I went from that to zero in like a week,
Ah,
right? And it was like, okay, I've got all this training and experience. What am I going to do? But the other part of that question was, what do I want to do? Not what could
yeah.
I do? What do I want to do that I would have fun at?
Hmm.
Right. And what I realized is that I did not have a well organized business. I had a junk drawer. I had all these courses and programs and things that I had taken that with no particular focus at all. And it
Hmm.
was like, okay, what am I going to do to get business? And it meant I needed to streamline and pick a horse and ride it, kind of, right? And
Yeah.
it didn't start out with getting clients. It started out with productivity and profit, how to help people be more productive,
Yeah.
right? And it evolved from there. But there were one of the things that I'm really good at is I recognize patterns. I
Mm.
like models, because what I learned from corporate was if you can't remember it, you can't use it,
Mm.
right? I mean, I would go through these wonderful trainings, and then in a crisis, I go, oh, they taught us something about this, but what binder is it in?
Mm.
Right. And so you do your default, you go back. And that's what, your limiting beliefs do. When you're in a crisis or you've got you're doing something different and you don't have a place to go,
Yeah.
right? Then you default to what you already know. So one of my models is make your learning last. And so you learn something, you apply it, you share it. And the benefit of sharing it is once it comes out of your mouth, right? Or you
Yeah.
write it down, it really clarifies what you're getting out of it. But more importantly, it makes you an expert to other people. It makes you a generous expert because you're sharing something with them
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can fine tune it. And the last part is what's going to trigger me that I need this? One of the places, and that's the proactive piece. This will be great to use here. So you've already made that decision before you get there. Right. And so I started noticing certain patterns. So one of the patterns is most entrepreneurs who have been in business are really good at what they do. If they have a client, their clients love them. Do you know? So it's not a service delivery issue, it's a client attraction issue.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've come up with some models. One is my Be Found model to help people see what it is they're doing and where they've got gaps in their client attraction model.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to dive into that Be Found framework. But before that, you'd mentioned, and I think this is, I don't want to kind of glaze over this. You talked about your business as a cluttered junk drawer. And the other key thing was you were building your business just by referrals, like word of mouth. People, right? You didn't have to do marketing advertising because they were just coming to you. So, how do you or why do you think you got into this place of this cluttered junk drawer? Because I'm sure it's happening to a lot of other business owners.
Because we think we need to be fixed. We're always looking for the magic pill. We're
Mm.
always looking for the thing that's the missing piece to the puzzle, do you know? And I think that, we are our best strategy. And
Mm.
so it was like, I mean, during this time frame, I signed up for two coaching programs. One was $25,000. for a year. And at the end of that year, I still did not know who my ideal client was,
Mm,
right? Which is everything else hinges kind of on that. You build from that, the people that you're trying to attract. And if you can't figure that out, I mean, because typically they do it from a demographic perspective, how old are they,
yeah.
whatever. And if I had to pick one, I would have said my ideal client was a Canadian woman whose name started with A, because that was the, which didn't help me at all,
Yeah.
right? I went on a free phone call, 30-minute phone call with somebody, right? And she said, "What situation are they in?" And I said, "Well, they're all trying to scale their business. They're all working as hard as they possibly can, but they're not getting the clients. They're not getting clients that they like. They're, taking anything that comes down the pike, right? They're not spending their time doing the thing that they love that would actually make them more money."
Yeah.
And that's what they all had in common.
Hmm. Yeah. So they're in that place of, I need clients, I want clients, I'm going to do all of these things. But as you were saying before, your junk drawer was full of programs. So maybe they're full of ideas, full of
Hmm.
actions they're taking, but they lack strategic focus.
And sometimes they're not complementary. Sometimes they actually go against. So you hear one person who goes, you don't really need to use social media. And then you have somebody else that says you need to post 5 times a day, right? And the bottom line is that if you're not, whatever you pick to do, it's got to be something you're willing to do,
Yeah, it's
right?
your wheelhouse.
So I wasn't doing social media because to me, social media was a plate of your picture of your plate or your next outfit or doing, TikTok and dancing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that,
Hmm.
And so right now, what when I talk to my clients, I go, just understand that I am not a social media expert, because people say you should put different things different places. I'm not going to do that. I do my newsletter and then I post it on social media. The people who like me will read it on social media or they won't.
True.
But I do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the importance here is doing something that feels authentic to you.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's the thing, because when you're trying to do something that isn't right, if so you do a lot of workshops, and we're going to talk about how everyone can jump on one of those. But you
Yeah.
do workshops and that's in your wheelhouse. But if you were trying to get on social media, it would be super awkward and uncomfortable and unenjoyable.
Well, the other thing is I'm a speaker. I'm not a writer.
Mm,
Okay. And so for me, it's easy for me to record something and have it transcribed for my posts.
exactly.
It's the way that it makes it easier. And speaking should be a strategy for me, which is why the workshop works for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I like to speak and I speak on summits and that kind of thing because it's easy. But here's the thing that I think that is the most important. Most women
Hmm.
do not think that they have a unique power, and they do. It's not about coming up with something magically new. It's about doing something better for the people that you want to work with. So, just a really short version of the story that I do in my workshop, I call it the ice cube story. Um, and just really fast, it's like I went into the freezer, and my husband had gotten these silicone ice cube trays in all these different sizes because he was going to make bourbon. He was going to drink bourbon, and he wanted an ice cube that wouldn't melt, water down his drink.
Big one. Yeah.
And I'm like, this is really interesting, but it didn't fit in my water bottle,
Ah.
right? So I'm like, this is interesting. Back in the 00s, you could only get ice industrially. And somebody said, what if we delivered it to houses? And somebody said, that's probably crazy. And then somebody else said, we got to the point where you had the ice cube trays that your grandmother had, with the metal things that were horrible to use. And you couldn't make very many of them because the freezers were small. And then somebody said, what if you could buy ice cube in bulk at the convenience, the 7-Eleven or the convenience store? And somebody was like, nobody will use that. And people loved it. Then you had the ice makers in your refrigerators. Then you have the individual ice makers. Then you've got the different silicone. I mean, you can even get ice cubes that are like in the, like a skull's head or different, kinds of things, right? And we're talking water and cold.
Mhm.
We are not talking some magic ingredient that you found or some, and unless you're trying to sell ice to Eskimos, right? There is somebody who's going to need ice in a format that you have found a need for. So
Yeah.
your unique power is not starting from scratch. It's a combination of all the things that you've done in life that let you see life differently. So typically what I say to my women is, what is who are the people that you would like to work with? If money wasn't an issue, who would you work with even if they couldn't pay you, right? And then what are the skills that you're bringing from your life experience that those people need?
Yeah.
That's where your unique power is, because you're able to help them to get into action the way nobody else can. Because we are moving out of the education expert, I have all the information, because you can find information anywhere.
Yeah.
Information is not the issue, it's the overload of information. Your job when you service people, or you are of service, is to help people be able to take that information and actually implement it and get results. And
Yeah.
so helping people in a unique way, right? So part of what I do is I help people, be able to talk about their business in a way that catches people's, attention. And what I've learned recently is apparently I do really well with people who are incredibly detailed oriented, because, you know, what your client wants the gooey brownie. And if you're really detail oriented, they go, I want a gooey brownie. And you say, okay, here's 2 cups of flour, here's some cocoa, here's some eggs, here's a recipe. That's not what they want, right? They don't want the details. They don't want the process.
Yeah.
They want to know about the end result. And
Yeah.
so that is the thing, I tell lots of stories, I help put together models, I recognize, so we were talking a little bit earlier, and one of the things we talked about is it's very common for people to resist having to bring on other people,
Mm.
because they're like, I'm not sure, I don't want to be a boss, I don't know how to do this, I don't. And that's a normal pattern for
Mm.
entrepreneurs, right? Another normal pattern for entrepreneurs is, since we're talking to a women's group, and it's a little racy, I call it entrepreneurial prostitution, where you, when you're in your business and you say, I will, if the price is right, I'll do it,
Mm.
whether you like to do it or not. The downside to that is you can service, that sounds terrible when you're talking about prostitution,
Yeah, that's okay.
you give the right client so much more because you click. You're
Mm.
excited, they're excited, right? And they get the best, and they're willing to willingly pay you. You don't have to go through this, well, I've got a payment plan and I've got this, and da, da, da. I mean, you may have a payment plan, but usually they'll come to you and say, I want to do this. I need to do this. Can you help me?
Yeah. So that's
Right?
the type of attraction that you're talking about when you get really clear on who you want to work with. So listeners, I hope you like paused at that moment when Yvonne said those 2 questions. If not, go back, pause, answer those questions around who is your ideal person that you would work with, even for free, not prostituting yourselves, but for free. It's just a hypothetical, right? And then also like the skills and gifts and talents that you have that would match up for them, that would help them. So make sure you do that activity there. Let's dive in, Yvonne, to your Be Found framework. What is it? How do people apply it?
It's really simple.
Okay.
Like I say, you don't need to be fixed. You're fine the way you are. That doesn't mean that you're not going to grow and you're going to keep learning. But people will be drawn to you the way you are. I mean, I did a workshop once, and my client said to me afterwards, I don't know how to say this to you, but the person who did that workshop is not the client, is not the coach I love working with, because I was like all polished and timed out, and
Mm.
I wasn't goofy like myself. So
Yeah.
the first thing is, the F is that you need to have a focus, and the focus needs to be on what your unique power is, so that you're telling people you need to stand out, so people see that your solution is what they need,
Mm.
right? The O is outreach. You need to do outreach consistently. And that is guided by the kind of people that you're trying to focus on.
Mm.
because we tend to do feast or famine. You know, you do a lot of outreach networking, blah, 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 blah. You get a client and you stop. Then you have to like prime the pump and start all over again. So you need to do it on a consistent basis and have systems that do that for you so that you're following up.
Okay.
Okay. Then you need to understand your client's journey. So I use a model called RAIN. People need to recognize that there's a general problem. They need to acknowledge that they have a problem. They need to investigate, and then they need to get their needs met. By the time they investigate and get their needs met, they're with you. You know,
Mm.
they found you. So what are the two pieces at the beginning is where people have problems. How do you stand out in a group? You know, of all the messages. I mean, when I started, I did a lot of stuff on change, and I was like, I mean, this person does change, this person does change, this person does change. You know, why would somebody want mine? But the way I explain it resonates with a certain group of people. And so that's why they're attracted to me. And so
Yeah.
that's where it's getting your message straight. So I'm working with somebody um, who is doing insurance. And most people think of insurance as life insurance. And we don't want to talk about dying, right?
Mm.
And she said to me the other day, she said, we've been searching for a hook. And she said to me, there is insurance that you can live while you can use while you're still living. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. And everybody that I bounce this off of goes, really?
Mm.
Okay. So something that's going to grab people that makes you stand out,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But you need to understand where they are. And there are other things in the journey. Where are you in life? For typically for women, um, you know, and it changes for different reasons. And people go through the brain thing at different stages. So people acknowledge that they've got a problem like cancer, like in a
Mm.
blink of an eye. But
Yeah.
you know, just general aches and pains, it takes you time. But you know, for women, there is a point where you say there's got to be more.
Yeah.
Your kids go off to college. You don't no longer have to take care of your parents or something. It's like, what am I doing in my life for me? And that's where you start to really step into your uniqueness because you're like, I hid my light and it's time for me to shine and help other people shine as well.
Exactly. So you've
And then
got,
the last two real fast, because I know that last two is nurture relationships. Not every relationship is going to be a client, but you know, and then the last one, which I love, is delight, deliver, and delight. Because if you can't delight somebody before they work with you, they don't think you're going to delight them when they do.
gotcha. Yeah. So listeners, I hope you got all those. I wrote them down. Focus, outreach, understand, nurture, then delight and deliver. So a good activity would be to take that and to see with what Yvonne was saying, which pieces of these do you have in place? Which ones are you fallen short? And what out of what she's been sharing can you apply to be able to really be found and attract those ideal clients? So, a lot of times people will say, coaches will say, "Oh, you did this wrong," or "You need to change this," or "You need to be this way." But you were mentioning before we jumped on the recording here that it's really not women's fault. And so, can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Part of it is, again, like I said, in the women's journey, is the things that happen to you in childhood. You're told your
Mm.
parents give you ideas so that you're not, you know, so that you're going to be safe. Because as children, we're fearless.
Mm.
We will do everything and
Yeah, yeah.
anything. I mean, my sister once jumped off the roof of the garage. Do you know? I told her she couldn't play with the older kids, and she got mad and jumped.
Here you go.
Yeah. So we have these, you know, things that we should do. We should do this. I mean, you know, I know that one of the big things was it's really hard to say no to your family. I mean, when I said this to my daughter once, something happened. I said, just because they're family doesn't mean you have to say yes. You can say no. And then she turned around and said no to me. And I was like, wait, I didn't mean me. But so we have this misconception,
Mm.
right? The other thing is, again, the way we're educated, right? So that you're always trying to go for the right answer and do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And the thing that we do really well you cannot see by yourself. I heard an academic do this whole big talk, and at the very end, he said, you need somebody else to let you know you have spinach in your teeth. Other
Yeah.
people see your value when you don't. And so that's one of the reasons that a coach or a peer group or a mastermind or something like that can be really, or even a community can be
Mm.
really helpful to you because they'll go, oh my God, that's amazing. I never thought of that before. And you're like, what do you mean? Doesn't everybody think like that? So you can't see yourself the way other people see you. And
Yeah,
so that's why, and then you have to be all right with saying, it's okay for me to stand up. It's okay for me to say, I'm really good at this. Whether you're attracting clients or opportunities, if you're still working and you don't say to somebody, I'm good at this, I want to do more of this, they're not going to give you those opportunities.
for sure, for sure. I preach that a lot to my women, and the idea that there's a Business Insider study that said men and women see success differently. Men attribute their success to their innate skills and talents. Women attribute their success to luck and help from others. And that really ticks me off. But having that support of a coach, having someone else to, yeah, say when
Mhm.
you got broccoli in your teeth is so crucial. I think Les Brown put it really well when he said, when you're in you can't see the picture when you're in the frame.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I don't know how many times, and for the people just listening to me, like imagine a hand in front of your face and you're looking around the hand going, but what's the answer? What should I do? Where should I go? I don't understand. And then the thing, it's right in front of you. And that's when the coach will say, isn't it that? And point at a thing right in front of you.
So I will tell you a really easy thing that comes up all the time. So if people are talking about having workshops, it's like, when should I have a workshop? What's the best time to have a workshop? And I'll say, what's the time that you're willing to do it more than once? I'll do something, like at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night once, but that's not my time when I've
Yeah.
got the best energy. So pick a time that's good for you. Then look at when the people that are your right clients. If you're dealing with entrepreneurs, then you might want to have it during the day. If you're dealing with people who have jobs, then you may want to do it in the evening or on the weekend.
Yeah.
But the decision is yours because you're the person who has to do it over and over and over again. What works for me may not work for you. And so you have to learn to trust your gut on some of these things. There's no magic pill.
Yeah. And speaking of workshops, a time that you really like to do workshops is every third Wednesday of the month at
Yes.
2 p.m. Eastern or 11 a.m. Pacific. We're going to make sure that's in the show notes so that everyone can register to go to the workshop that Yvonne's doing or does every month called Attract Your Right Clients with Your Unique Power. Basically, what we've been talking about today, but you get to dive deeper into it with Yvonne. And she's going to take you through and help you a lot more with that. And since we're kind of on this idea of gifts and being able to kind of take the next steps. Can you share more about your little course, your mini course that you're gifting everyone in the audience?
So the course that I'm gifting is clarify your client's trust journey. And
Mm,
it's from paying to trust to profit. And
mhm.
it's the RAIN model that I shared with you, but it's reverse because
Okay.
because if I say to you, who's your right client, then you're stuck. At least I was. But if you start with, who am I working with now that
Mm,
I really like? What is it that they're getting? And here's the key part, the things that they like should be the things that are in your program,
yeah.
right? What are the unexpected things that delighted them? That's your unique power. And then
Mm,
we reverse engineer it. So it comes to your mailbox. So it's like a couple 15 minutes a day for 5 days. And at the end, we redo your introduction so that when you're networking, you've got a better introduction that highlights because your introduction should tell people what you do uniquely well.
yeah. Sounds awesome. So all of that information about those two opportunities are going to be in the show notes, so you can check that out, as well as Yvonne's website and other social links so you can check her out and connect with her in those ways. Now, Yvonne, this has been great. I do have a final question for you, and that
Mm.
is just what's one like final message or tip that you would like to share with all the listeners?
I'm going to share my mantra.
Okay.
Okay. It doesn't matter how many times you fall down. It only matters how many times you get up and how fast. And this came from my losing over 150 pounds. And what I discovered was if I beat myself up every time that I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and it took, and it took me, if it took me a year to get started again, it was going to take me forever. But if I could start the next meal,
Yes.
right, then I didn't lose the momentum. And so you don't have to do it right, and when you fall down, you learn something, you know, and you go, I'm not going to step in that hole again,
Mm.
and you keep going.
Yeah, so true about all aspects of life. And so, listeners, I hope you're kind of taking that to heart, what Yvonne's saying. If you've already dropped your New Year's resolution, if you're way off on your goals right now, just think, what's the next positive step I can make?
Hmm.
Stop that spiral, stop going down. So, thank you, Yvonne, so much for being here. I appreciate
Well,
all you.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, for listeners, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you're getting all the notifications for the Dynamic Women podcast so that you don't miss another amazing episode as I switch between solo episodes and bringing on a dynamic woman like Yvonne today. Also, who needs to hear Yvonne's message? Please share it with them because when you both listen to it, then you both get to talk about it and grow together. So until next time, everyone, stay dynamic. Bye.